Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Stacy, and I'm a bookseller and the events coordinator at Belmont Books. Belmont Books, for those of you who are not familiar with us, is an independent and locally owned bookstore in Belmont, Massachusetts. Before we begin, I'd like to let you know that we have a number of virtual events coming up, including Abby Jimenez in conversation with Emily Henry tomorrow night, and Denny S. Bryce in conversation with Julie Carrick Dalton next Tuesday. You can register for these and our other events on our website, belmontbooks.com, which is also where you can purchase tonight's book, From Rabbit Ears to the Rabbit Hole. If you have any concerns during the presentation, you can send me a message in the chat section. If you have any questions for either Kathleen or Matthew, you can put them into the Q&A section and we will get to as many questions as we can. We're very excited to welcome Kathleen and Matthew. I want to tell you a little bit about them and then I will turn the event over to them. Kathleen Collins has been a professor and reference librarian at John Jay College of Criminal Justice in New York City since 2007. She's the author of Watching What We Eat, The Evolution of Television Cooking Shows, and Dr. Joyce Brothers, the founding mother of TV psychology. Kathleen's work has also appeared in the Journal of Popular Film and Television, Critical Studies in Television, Journalism and Mass Communication Quarterly, and Camera Obscura, Feminism, Culture, and Media Studies. Prior to working at John Jay, Kathleen worked as an adjunct librarian at CUNY Graduate Center in NYU and as research editor for Ladies Home Journal, Time, Glamour, and Working Woman magazines. Kathleen produces and co-hosts a podcast called Indoor Voices. She also enjoys listening to others' podcasts, especially unscripted, casually produced podcasts that feature people talking about big ideas in accessible language, but she does have a weakness for a judicious smattering of fancy vocabulary words. Matthew Gilbert has been a TV critic at the Boston Globe for the past 24 years, although you do not look old enough for that to be possible. Before that, he was
exactly what you said. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. Before that, he was a features writer and covered books and movies for the Globe, as well as celebrity and author interviews. He has written thousands of TV reviews, trend pieces, and profiles. Matthew has written for Slate and Esquire.com and was the managing editor of the Boston Review. His book, Off the Leash, A Year at the Dog Park, was published in 2014. And without further ado, I will turn the event over to Kathleen and Matthew.
Thank you so much, Stacy. Kathleen, I just want to say I really enjoyed reading your book. It's almost like the secret diary of a TV affair, you know. And it's really personal and yet at the same time kind of more broadly cultural. And I thought you really pulled it all together beautifully. So, I appreciated the way that you defend TV fiercely as, you know, legitimate. And I mean that word, you know, you're an academic, you're in the academic world where TV hasn't always been embraced. I mean, I know now there are classes on the wire and everything, but you sort of had to go through that. What's that been like to be an academic who's into TV?
Well, to be honest, it's really the reason that I wrote this book. I think because I had to write certain things in order to get tenure and promotion as a faculty member. It was kind of my reward to write in my own voice and about the thing that I really loved. I had actually been writing about TV from an academic perspective to get that tenure and promotion, which I never thought was going to be possible, but it turned out to be. So I was just kind of reflecting on the fact that I was able to do that and thought, well, let me, you know, now write in my own voice about this thing that I've been treating academically. And what it's been like is very, very, very lonely at my institution. In the world, as you say, there's lots of scholarship and classes for television studies. It is a legitimate field and has been for several decades, but not at my school.
Yeah.
I'm the TV person, you know, if people even know that I exist. It's not a thing. I find that there are some people who work media studies into their curriculum, but I'm just all by myself. So I have felt very much like an odd duck in academia and really relying on conferences and social media and other things like that to commune with other people who talk about TV in a serious manner, and people like you, critics, who really, you know, the television criticism has changed so much just in the last 25 years, as I'm sure you've noticed. So it's, you know, I get a lot from things outside my institution, but a lot of the book really stemmed from that needing to kind of break out of my cage of being in academia. And I do talk about it in the book.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you make a great argument for all of the serious critics to take television seriously. You know, I mean, that sounds glib, but look, I mean, it's not just because we're now receiving some of the best TV storytelling ever. It's also just because it's part of life. It's a huge part of life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We
I mean, you're
can't
talking to
ignore it.
somebody who, you know, when I took this job, I had people say to me, I don't know if you want to do that, TV. And now, everybody wants my job.
Now, did they
right?
say that because they thought it was a kind of a lowbrow medium, or because it was something was changing with TV, that it wasn't a solid career path? What was the
No, I think it was the former. Absolutely. TV is lowbrow. You know, you don't want to, it's not one of the arts. You don't want to, take your career in that direction.
right?
Whereas now, I mean, there are so many kids who are so smart and so good on TV, and they're all, writing about it, and many of them professionally.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad you ignored those caution,
Me too.
those nervous Nellies, because you stuck with it. Because when you started, was it the mid '90s or?
Exactly. Like,
Yeah.
I started a year before The Sopranos, so it was
Wow.
98.
Yeah.
98 or 90.
Okay. So am I right that was kind of the beginning? I mean, Sopranos kind of tells us the answer, but that was like the beginning of this new era of prestige quality storytelling.
Yeah, that was it. That was the start.
So your
I was
timing was
wondering,
great.
yes. Now, do you think that you would feel as passionately as you do about taking TV seriously if we had not undergone the past 20 years of, golden age TV?
I don't think so. I still feel very passionately about a lot of the shows that I watched in my formative years. So it might have just been an article instead of a book.
Right.
And wouldn't maybe have impacted my thinking and my career and affected my life and my creative life in so many ways in the last 25 years. But, I spend a lot of time waxing on about the Norman Lear era and the Mary Tyler Moore, what I consider to be the golden age, which is the 1970s. So that had a big impact on me, on just who I am. So I think, yes, but then it really was extended and solidified because of this new era and the rabbit hole,
Right, exactly. I'm so fascinated to learn that you actually do not have TV as furniture.
Yeah.
That all of your viewing, as I get it from the book, is on phone, iPad, and maybe laptop. I don't know.
Laptop. I have, various sized laptops around, but they're all much smaller than any normal TV. And, you know, I am limited in the fact that I pick and choose my streaming services and hop on and hop off them, depending on what shows have cooled at, you know, in a certain period. So I won't watch something that's just on. And I
Right.
won't see a lot of the award shows or things like that that everybody's watching, or, you know, if there's some State of the Union address, things like that, I just completely miss. I'm not seeing a lot of news or commercials or those things that you have when there's just a TV on in the house. But I've lived this way now for a dozen years, and I've never wished that I had a TV. And I do
Yeah.
have a small apartment, so it makes, you know, everything just kind of works out well. And that, you know, there's
But what
so
about,
much of what we can see is online anyway.
but you know what my question is. What
Um,
about watching with your husband or with somebody,
well,
you know, the actor?
I think you would be dismayed to know what incredibly low standards we have for audio visual entertainment. I mean, I don't mean the content, I mean the technology. Like the
Really?
small screen, the, you know, intermittent sound quality, it does not bother us at all. Like we're just
And
used
so
to
you
it.
do that together. You'll do
Yes,
that together.
yes.
Okay. All right. All right then.
I thought you were going to say, you know, my question is, you know, where do you put your vase of flowers or whatever, you know, like what do you do without
Right.
that piece of furniture? But nobody can put a vase of flowers on their TV anymore anyway, right?
Yeah, it's true. I suppose you could put a, you know, I don't even know what you could put, nothing.
Nothing.
Yeah, I just was sort of trying to think about the TV as, and you write about this in the book, you know, TV as perceived as kind of a unifier. And a friend, I think it was a friend who has a mandatory family viewing time.
Yeah,
You know, the value of actually sitting around with people
right.
and watching TV.
Right. I found that very touching. I mean,
Yeah.
she's a colleague of mine. She has teenage children. When we were talking about the book I was working on at the time, this book, and she said, "Oh yeah, it makes me really sad." She said that people are so, you know, atomized and watching TV separately, and we're all with our earphones on. So she forces her teenage children with her husband to watch. You know, they agree on a show to watch, and they watch it together. And I'm sure talk about it. And I thought it was very touching, you know, because that is missing from
Right.
a lot of people's lives now, the together watch.
Right. And the misguided approach to that is to say, well, no TV. We have to sit together and stare at each other in a room. And it's like,
Right,
no,
right.
watch TV together and, you know, annoy each other and talk during the show and all that.
Yeah, I mean,
And then afterwards,
I should have
go ahead.
asked her what, you know, what are some of the things you watch and what comes of it, because I'm, you know, knowing the shows out there today, we know how provocative, thought-provoking, and how much you can get out of a show, to talk about serious issues in addition to just being entertained. So I'm sure
Right,
it's great for her family.
exactly. Good for them.
Yeah.
I mean, the conversation around TV to me is something I harp on a little bit in the Globe, because I feel like, you know, everybody, it's a cliche and you point that out in your book, but people are atomizing, as you just said. And, you know, it's nice to share things at the same time. I mean, the whole binge culture phenomenon is tricky that way, you know, because you can't necessarily have a conversation with fans of the same show because you're all in different places.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I referenced this article in the book by Dan Engber. I don't know if it was in Slate or something, but he was complaining about this small talk about TV. I think the title was something like TV talk small TV talk is ruining your dinner party, or something like that.
Right.
I mean, what you're saying is true. It's very hard, and everyone's always worried about spoiling shows. And oh, I can't talk about this because you haven't seen season 3 yet. And yet, we've all kind of gotten used to that.
We have adapted.
And we know, people watch shows so quickly that it's only a matter of time before you can all talk about the show together. And if your one friend is still slowly watching whatever, you can talk about it with somebody else. There's so many people. And I have found that social media is great outlet for this. I mean, I do, rue the amount of time that I spend on Twitter, but one of the good things that I do get from it is being able to commune with people about various TV shows. And I think it's satisfying, and then your friends tell you what to watch. I mean, I have a couple of friends who I think are here tonight who are, it's like, you got to watch this, you got to watch this. And it's like, you get these assignments from your friends, and then you check in and, talk about it. And I love that. That's the kind of work I'm very happy to take on.
Yeah, it's funny because, it used to be that everybody approached me to talk about TV and assumed I'd already seen everything, because there was a time when you potentially could.
Right.
But now, I mean, people ask me about shows I've never even heard of.
Right.
And occasionally people will do what your friends do with you, is say, you've got to watch this. Like Shtisel was one of those shows recently. Like 10 people said, no, you've just got to watch it. And it's true, it's great. And it does give you that feeling like you're watching it with people, and it's a communal feel.
And a note to self, I'm adding Shtisel to my must-watch list. But
that was actually my secret agenda. That's why I
no, you've been successful, because that's the thing. If you trust people, or people know you and know what your tastes are, and they say you must do this, then they're right. And I'm sure people have that relationship with you as the Globe critic. They're like, yeah, if Matthew likes that show, then I have to watch it. So that's a powerful position.
Well, you are, I do feel in service to readers. I really do, because and that may be one of the distinctions between being a newspaper critic and being a critic on a TV website. Maybe and maybe not, but maybe it's just a function of space. But I feel more like what you described David Bianculli doing, which is so much out there. I just want to try to find the good stuff. I don't feel like I need to see everything and be coldly analytical about it. I just want to find the good stuff and tell people to watch it.
Right. I was actually going to ask you that, if you felt like, because you can't possibly cover everything anyway, or even the vast majority of it. So what I think what he said was that he steers people towards the good. But in the conversation that I was describing between him and Ron Simon, a TV scholar, who was talking about the cultural values of Love Boat, the Love Boat. They had differing philosophies about what I think I called it good versus bad, and Bob Thompson was saying, oh, the bad TV is still good in a way. I'm really simplifying his argument, but that's the difference between a scholar, I guess, and a critic. A critic has a job to do, like you say. It's in service to your readers, and they don't want to hear you just musing about something that isn't going to affect their behavior, probably.
I think so. Unfortunately, that makes me. I'm in the service industry, but that's okay. I'm proud of it.
Good.
Yeah. As much as the book is about you, it's also about just culture. And I found myself thinking about which shows have had the most impact on our culture. I mean, I thought about Joe Biden and what he said about Will and Grace. Maybe, I think it was when gay marriage passed the Supreme Court. He said, you know, Will and Grace, it changed a million zillion minds, and
Right.
that opened the door. What
Right.
shows do you think have done that?
I mean, Murphy Brown comes to mind,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
And no matter what Dan Quayle said, it obviously,
Because he said that,
yeah,
you know.
right, because he said it, exactly.
Yeah.
And then Ellen also. I
Right.
mean, those and Will and Grace. I had completely forgotten about that Biden comment, but you know, those were three really galvanizing, powerful TV moments that I think were turning points. Who
Yeah.
knows? You know, let's try to imagine a world without those things happening. You know, the
Right.
social progress would have happened anyway, but maybe TV spurred it along a little faster.
Yes.
And
I think
and
go.
well, and they were all network TV shows, all during the 90s. So everyone was watching them, you know?
Right. Back when, you know, getting 15 million was not common, almost.
Right.
Not common, but almost common, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, now you as Generation X, what do you have to say for yourself? What shows came out of
We've been asked that a lot lately. Generation X, what do you have to say for yourself?
Right.
So wait, what's the question? What do I think about the?
Well, it is interesting, you know, the boomers have their shows, and I guess Gen Y is, you know, reality shows. What's Gen X? Because you talk about in the book about identifying generationally.
Yeah, I mean, again, I go back to those shows in the 70s, All in the Family,
Right.
all the Norman Lear shows, but especially All in the Family, Mary Tyler Moore, Maude, all of those shows were very socially progressive. And because it was the 70s, most of us, I mean, most people I know anyway, were just allowed to watch TV without any limits. You know, I mean, maybe today some people wouldn't want their kids to watch either a certain amount of TV or a certain type of show, but hey, just go watch TV. You know, that's what we were told. Just go in the room, shut up, watch TV. And it was wonderful. And so we became exposed to these shows at a very young, tender age. And I think it really snuck into our psyches and stayed there. And some of the shows, even I watched, like the Smothers Brothers comedy or Laugh-In, you know, really edgy, irreverent shows that I think a lot of Gen Xers were. I'm really an old Gen Xer. I'm like a year away from being a baby boomer, so I might be older than a lot of Gen Xers who grew up more on 80s TV.
Right.
So I don't know it as well, but I, you know, have a taste of it, and think it was different and not as good.
Yeah.
You know, that's my opinion. People definitely disagree with me, and I mentioned that in the book too. I know TV critics who think of the 80s as the golden age of television. So, you know, to each his own.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that really had a big impact on Generation X, I think, was Sesame Street.
Yes, absolutely.
Also socially progressive, you know.
Yeah.
In
nurturing.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I feel like I cut you off.
No, go ahead.
Oh, okay. All right. I feel as though in the book you're a little bit shy about putting down reality TV. I mean, you're very respectful of all different tastes, so I think that fits. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good observation. I think I probably didn't really fully express my true opinions. um, because I think I have that philosophy that if it if it matters to you for whatever reason, a
Yeah.
show or a type of show, it's kind of that Bob Thompson Love Boat mentality. Like then it is something good. And there's a whole body of scholarship about reality TV and how it's in some ways self-helpy, and it's kind of hard for me to see, but I get
Aspirational.
it. I get it. It doesn't I just don't like it. I don't I don't like it. I don't know what to tell you. It's not my
Yeah.
style. It feels very fake and manipulative to me and not interesting and compelling. So it just wasn't for me. I did watch some of The Real World. I watched some of Survivor. And I guess I just don't really, I'm not that into the competition shows. Those don't really do much for me. Um,
Yes. Yeah,
yeah,
I feel the same way. And I assume that the people who are really into them are perceiving them almost as we perceive fictional stories. They're just um, easy, predictable
oh yeah,
tropes
yeah.
with easily defined characters,
Like
and
maybe like soap operas, right? They're kind of
yeah,
like
yeah,
soap
yeah,
operas.
yeah, very much. Exactly. That's right. Yeah, it almost fills that same gap. Yeah.
Right.
Now, you were a General Hospital person,
Yeah.
as was I.
And probably during the same, because it was a very long running. Is it still running?
Uh, that's a really good question.
Maybe
I
someone
have,
can tell us in the chat, but we
yeah.
probably were seeing it around. I think I watched it when I was in high school, so you know, late 70s, early 80s, and then some in college, so early 80s.
Right. When everybody watched it because it was Luke and Laura, right?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that going back to what you said about watching together. I mean, that's the reason that I watched General Hospital, because it was the way
Right.
me and my girlfriends hung out together. Um, I was not a soap opera person, really. I mean, my mom watched them. I never joined her. And, it was just a fun activity for me and my friends. It was the perfect time. It was on when we got home from school, you know, snack time, hangout time, braid each other's hair time. Perfect.
Yeah. And I think that's why a lot of people watch The Bachelor. It's like they talk about it the next day, and
Yeah.
it's one of the remaining sort of live-ish kind of shows that on the networks that people have to watch live because
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, yeah,
Right. So that's something I don't see without a TV.
right,
No, so
exactly.
so that's why I have no idea. But I see I think Stacy said it is still on. I
Yeah,
can't even imagine. I can't even
it's
I'm sure I don't
fascinating.
know any of those characters. They're
You know
long
what
gone.
fascinates me sometimes is people who watch reruns of, like, season 3 of Survivor. I mean, I guess it's like watching old baseball games or something,
Right. Also
but
mysterious.
yeah, it's also mysterious.
But I know people do
Right.
it. I mean, I'll watch
Yeah.
reruns of shows that I'm sure some people think is crazy, but I say we listen to the same songs over and over again, go back to the
Yeah.
museum and look at the same old paintings again and again, so why not?
Yeah. And you write a little bit about, some of the reboots and revivals, and I could actually parse that for you sometime if you want me
Yeah. Yes,
to.
I have no idea what the real definitions are.
Yeah, yeah. Well, revival most simply is just the same cast
Okay.
getting together,
Like
in the
Will and
same character.
Grace.
Right. Reboots is a broader term. So anyway,
Okay.
um, but what do you think about that? Is it nostalgia? Is it lack of imagination by Hollywood? Is it maybe all
Yeah.
of that?
I mean, both of those seem like viable reasons. I mean, maybe also the things that we see popping up are correlating to who's in who are the producers now, like Mad About You just came back, Will and Grace, like it's nostalgia for those people. If they were very,
Yeah.
very popular shows, they sort of know they already have a built-in audience, so they'll be successful, at least up to a certain point if the show is good,
Right.
And by the way, I watched the Mad About You reboot recently.
Yeah.
Revival. Did you watch it?
I didn't have the stomach for it. Was it good? You liked it?
Yeah. Now, why do you say that? Because you didn't like the original?
I liked the original okay, but they weren't characters that I felt like I needed to go back to.
I understand.
Yeah.
Well,
But tell me, you liked
yeah,
it.
no, I was impressed because I don't watch, I mean, I watched Will and Grace Revival and I watched Mad About You. Will and Grace to me seemed like, I don't know, the older you get, time flies. So it seemed like it had been off the air for like 2 minutes before the revival came, but I'm sure it was
Right.
like 15 or something years. And I loved those characters and I really enjoyed seeing them again. Mad About You was a little destabilizing because it was so much older and really took me back to that time when I was watching it. I mean, it's not that old. It's not like, from the 70s or anything, but I was impressed with how they maintained the character's character. Like it was really, really well done. And I think that one must have been, made by somebody who, I mean, maybe it was Paul Reiser's idea. I have no idea, but that seemed like a nostalgia project.
Yes.
I have no idea.
Yeah, I was all about the Will and Grace revival for, the first 10 episodes. And then I was so done with them.
Yeah.
And I felt like by the second season, the writers were done with them. I mean, everybody was done with them.
Yeah.
And the last 5 or 6 episodes were,
yeah. How many did they do? How many seasons?
a good guy. I believe they did 2, but my memory isn't what it used to be, so
Yes,
it could be 3, but I think it was 2.
I might not have watched all of it.
I mean, in the first flush of the revival, I think they did like 18 episodes and they extended the season, but and then hard to remember.
Yeah.
But yeah, sometimes you just can't. Shame. Did you watch Shameless at all?
I started, but I didn't stay with it.
Yeah, I mean, that was a show I just really loved, even with all its flaws. And it's leaving Sunday after 11 years.
Oh my
part
God.
of me is like, oh, I'm going to miss it. And part of me is like, thank God. I mean,
That's incredible, 11 seasons.
It is incredible, yeah.
Well,
it's a show that I'm very defensive about. I love that show, and I think it was really well done.
Yeah.
But it stayed too long.
Oh, right.
That might fail.
That sounds like it.
Yeah. So anyway, and I loved your fondness for workplace comedies.
Yeah.
And the way you talked about your time in Cambridge and just, the way television can bring together an office is very sweet. And do you have some workplace comedies that you cherish in particular?
I mean, I did love Murphy Brown.
Yes.
And, news radio.
Yeah.
I'm probably forgetting a whole bunch, but it just seemed, I think I wrote about this. It just seemed like I was on the precipice of becoming an adult when I was watching shows like this. And it just seemed so fun and exciting. and what funny, smart people, work together and hang out. Like, life looks so fun. I can't wait to go live it and everything. And I mean, I've got to say that I think a few of my friends might be here tonight who absolutely proved that to be true. I mean, my first real grown-up job, which was in Cambridge, Mass, 02138, it was the best job I've ever had. I mean, it was the early to mid 90s. We were all roughly around the same age, a bunch of us watching TV together, writing a 90210 newsletter. I mean, it was blissful, and I was kind of ruined by that because it was never the same again anywhere else. I mean, I have a great job now. I really do love my job, but I don't know if it's age or the age we're in, or if it's just, my youthful zest is gone, but that was a golden era in my life. And it was like, wow, see, workplace life is really awesome. And so I thank my lucky stars and my wonderful friends for making that little dream come true for a little while.
And with your 90210, that was like your zine. That was your zine scene, right? Yeah.
It was our
It's
zine.
so funny.
I know. We
Yeah.
didn't, I mean, it was just so organic. We didn't think, let's make a zine. We just loved the fact that we were really into 90210. We loved talking about it. And we decided to start writing little funny reviews and really snarky reviews about it. And we didn't even know the word zine, I don't think, in 1994. But in retrospect, it's like, boy, we were really edgy.
Right. You were definitely ahead of the curve. I mean,
Yeah.
Remember Television Without Pity? Did you ever look at that website? And
Yeah.
that's like the progenitor of so much TV criticism, and they were so snarky and so
I
mean.
know. And is that not around anymore?
No, it became something else, and then something else, I think. I mean, maybe the archives are still there, but I don't believe that it exists in any iteration now, except, on every vulture-like website.
Right. Well, I mean, there's so much written about TV now. It just feels, there's all kinds of writing about TV. There's snarky, there's serious, there's, straight up reviews. There's, it's just incredible. And criticism has become, I mean, I hope that I imagine that you've been able to stay with it because it's become so much more, it's such a richer field to be writing about.
Yeah. And for me, that's absolutely linked to the shame of your life, which is The Sopranos. We all have those shame. You and I talked about this briefly.
I know. And I don't hide the fact that I've never seen The Sopranos, but it is my Achilles heel. I know I can remedy it.
No. This is how because there are I have a few secret shows I haven't seen that everybody talks about. And I just think, someday I'm going to get to that. Someday, it's like aspirational. It's like, someday I'll be able to take part in this conversation.
Right.
But for me, The Sopranos was, like a gift from heaven because it changed everything, I think, and after it came, the 6 Feet Under and, that whole era of The Shield and leading into Mad Men and Breaking Bad. And, that has made my job so much more interesting than it ever could have been,
Right.
Yeah.
I'll get to it. I will.
I think you'll love it. I mean, it's my number one show.
I think I will too. I mean, I've seen so many clips of it because it's such a part of the cultural fabric of our, of our lives that I know so many of the characters and kind of what they represent, but it's a superficial knowledge.
Right. Yeah, you could fake your way through a cocktail party if you had to.
Exactly.
Yeah. um, so people always ask me this, and I have finally come up with like an answer for them, which is like, what are your favorite shows of all time? It's such an obnoxious question, but it's actually a little self-defining, I've discovered. So
Yeah, I mean, I I don't know. I mean, it's like I've mentioned some of them already. It's those Norman Lear shows, which I think
right,
many of
right.
many of them hold up. Mad Men, Breaking Bad. You know, talking about this prestige era. There's just too many to count.
Yeah.
It keeps coming back to me, and I don't know if it's because it's recent-ish, but I was very, very affected by Schitt's Creek. And
Sorry.
did you watch it?
I did, and I loved it. Oh, absolutely.
I loved it, and I was so surprised how much I loved it, and it took me a while to get into it, like a lot of people. I mean, even, you know, Dan Levy and everybody says, what took everybody so long to come around and figure out how great we are? Now they have a million Emmys and everything. It did take me a few episodes to get into it, but I mean, part of it is that I did crazily binge it. So, you know, I
Yes.
kind of have a different relationship with shows. But it contained everything. You know, it was so
Yes.
perfect. It was snarky, irreverent, hilarious, well written, warm. You know,
So warm.
and
Yes.
I discovered, you know, during the time that I was binging it, which was like January of 2020. I was working on a fiction project, and it actually helped me that I was binging that show because because the narrative arcs of each episode and of the entire show were so perfect. And I'm not a person who studies structure or who outlines my work. I'm not, I'm like afraid of that kind of thinking. And so I sort of let Schitt's Creek be this little tutorial for me without me realizing it. And it actually, I had a few like creative breakthroughs in my fiction project while I was binging on that show. And I credit the show for that. And I just think it's a really good example of another way that TV is a force of good.
Right. So you mean like formally each episode you could see how they were setting things up, but you mean like that?
Yeah, and without thinking about it though. I mean,
Right.
I wasn't observing the show and taking notes and thinking about the structure. It's just that because I was binging it, I was so
Right.
suffused by the story that, you know, I'd be out taking a walk in the woods or something during the day and I would go bing, oh my gosh, with my story, it sort of does the same thing and it has the same message, and it just made me feel like I was part of this whole storytelling you know, projects. And I credit the show to them. I'm sure that I could say that about a lot of other shows, but that's the one that comes to mind most recently. But there's you know, I loved, for example, you know, I love comedies. Sitcoms are pretty much my favorite genre, but I loved The Handmaid's Tale.
Yeah.
And was like, it was so dark, and I was watching it at the worst possible time, all starting to wear masks, and we have a horrible tyrannical president, such that the plot of that show was 1 inch away from reality, so it felt. And I was still could not wait for that. You know, I was binging that episode during that time, and just thought that was also so well done. I mean, I think it's those shows like Mad Men and Breaking Bad that have the kind of have everything I need in them, you
Mhm.
know. And I just it's the writing, it's the acting, it just feels so satisfying. And there's so many more of those shows. I mean, another great show that fits that bill is Fleabag.
Exactly. Absolutely.
I mean, if we talked all night, I would just keep saying more and more and more. I mean, there's so many good ones.
Yes.
This is such a fun conversation. I hate to jump in, but we have so many questions. I'm hoping we can get to at least some of them. All right. Lisa said that she hates her TV being the focal point in her living room, but she prefers having the larger screen that she and her husband can watch together. And Kathleen, she would like to know how you and your husband position yourselves when you watch on a laptop together.
Well, we sit very next to each other and have the laptop, the 13-inch laptop on the coffee table, you know, like a foot and a half in front of us or however far away it is. And it is, I have zero complaints about that setup. It's because I have nothing, it's not like I used to have a giant TV and now I don't. This is what I have. So that's my setup.
Great. Melinda, I have to confess, I don't know what this means, but Melinda said, what are your thoughts on Jen Jones as a TV cohort? I don't know what that means.
Oh, Melinda, you stumped me. What is it?
Jim Jones, as in like
Jen Jones, like Gen X kind of, but Jen Jones? I don't know. Let's see, maybe. Did you put it?
1950.
Oh, 1955 to 1965. Okay, I don't know. Does that help? No, okay, that's fine. We have other questions we can get to. In fact, Melinda had a different question we can ask.
HR Puffin Stuff generation. Okay. Okay, go ahead.
All right.
Oh, wait. So Christy says Generation Jones is between baby boomer. I have never heard that term.
I've never heard it either.
So that's us. That's me. I mean, Christy, who I know is the same age as me. So, and so are some of my other. It is Jen Jones. Okay, thank you. I'm gonna go Google the heck out of this when I'm done. And now I have a new category, new way to categorize myself, which I'm always happy to have.
Yeah, okay. A number of people want to know, and I have to confess, I was a big fan too, about 30 something.
Oh yeah.
You have thoughts on that?
I loved 30 something, and I say in the book, I mean, it came along when I was again kind of about to have that life, or so I thought. You know, it was aspirational beyond belief, like all these people with their beautiful homes and their lovely spouses and children and you know, cool workplace things, and I'm like, oh, it's going to be great. And you know, I realize people make so much fun of it now, but I was really into that show. It was so emotional. It was such an emotionally manipulative show, and I bought it hook, line, and sinker. How about you?
Well, what's interesting to me about that, Kathleen, is that I think a lot of Gen Xers would think of 30 something as the worst parody of boom, like everything they hate about boomers in one place. So that's probably why you're Generation Jones.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, exactly. I think that makes perfect sense. Yeah.
That's funny.
Oh, I love
Andrea. I'm sorry.
I loved 30 something. Yes. Yeah.
You can probably both answer this. Andrea would like to know what you're watching now in particular.
I'm watching two things that my friend assigned me, and I know that he's here tonight. Breeders on Hulu. It's starring Martin Freeman, and Staged with David Tennant and Michael Sheen. And I'm also watching Dietland, the Marty Noxon joint. Those are the three things. I usually am only binging one thing at a time, but I'm currently binging 3 things. Very unusual, and I'm loving all of them.
Wow. interesting, Dietland, because that was panned. I never got to see it. That was Juliana Margulies, right?
Yeah.
What's driving you to that?
I can't remember why. I had started it a while back, and I didn't really like it. I thought I'd just give it another chance. There's something that feels almost like, it almost feels like a throwback now of some kind. I don't know. It feels a little dated, but I just really enjoy the characters. It's a little hyperbolic, and it is painful to look at Juliana Margulies. Her stick thin. I don't know if that's how thin she really is, but it's like very painful to look at her.
Oh my God.
Because I loved ER so much. I was a huge fan of her, but if that's just really
honestly, I watched The Undoing, and everybody talked about how distracting Nicole Kidman's hair and her jackets or coats were, and I couldn't stop looking at that face.
Yes,
I'm sorry,
I was the same way.
not nice, but it's like overdone, and
Yeah.
it's like it's too much. It's
Yeah,
too distracting.
Exactly. My husband and I were just constantly commenting on her frozen upper lip,
Yeah.
which is unfortunate because she's so beautiful.
Oh my
Absolutely no
God.
need to do any of that work.
Yeah.
But what are you watching right now? Whether for pleasure or work or pleasure or both?
Well, I just previewed The Nevers, the first 4 episodes. That's the new former Joss Whedon show that's coming to HBO and HBO Max.
Okay.
But I just, I watched the 3rd season of Shtisel. There's another plug for that. I mean, an amazing show that is, I won't tell you the story behind it, but Netflix basically brought it back for another season, and I was so afraid it was going to suck, and it doesn't. It's
good.
Really good. Yeah.
Okay, I look forward to that.
Call My Agent, French. Isn't it fun? It's
I forgot to mention that was my most recent obsession. I loved it so much.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I could go on. I'm watching everything.
Yeah.
Okay, Meredith says that she loved your book and how you wove the personal childhood stories with the TV shows you watched, and that she'd forgotten so many of these shows, but the memories flooded back as she read. Did you have to dig deep to remember those shows, or do you vividly recall it all easily? Are the memories all right there on the surface?
That's a great question. I didn't have to dig deep, because what I did was just talk about the shows that were easily remembered and that I remembered vividly. I only had to dig deep if I needed to kind of fact check something and remember a particular episode or something. But I was just, as I was thinking about writing the book, I was just keeping a running pen and paper list of shows that I remembered loving and watching. And so I figured if those are the ones that kind of rose to the top, those are the ones that meant something and mattered to me. So I just talked about those and left out many, many shows. I didn't, as someone asked me before, did you look at old TV guides for ideas? I'm like, no, that would have been impossible. I would have never been able to stop and actually write.
Exactly.
Because like Matthew has said, I'm sure I saw everything at a certain point, at least for a minute, because we were able to back then. So where would I stop talking about them? I would just have to write about every single show.
I remember my husband, when we first getting to know each other and still like buying gifts for each other, he got me some early editions or issues of TV Guide, like the fall preview issues from the 70s and 80s. It was so, I thought, oh my God, he knows my sweet spot.
He gets me.
Yeah, he gets me.
That's a very thoughtful gift.
Yes.
Here's another question you can both answer. Joe would like to know if you have an all-time favorite TV show character.
Oh, that's a good question.
Wow.
I wonder if he means someone well, he probably doesn't mean someone we necessarily like, just somebody we think is great TV.
Right. I mean, the first person who comes to mind for me, again, because it's so recent, is Moira Rose.
Yeah, more.
You know, because she's just so unique. But I mean, I think, I mean, you know, Mary Tyler Moore was just so lovable, and you know, it's kind of hard not to tear up just when I think about her.
Yeah, absolutely. God, that's a tough one. That is so tough. I mean, you know, of course I want to say Tony Soprano, just because I spent so many years just, enthralled by his psychology.
Yeah,
You know,
that's a good one.
figuring it out. You know, I feel like the best TV characters are the ones that you can analyze as if they're real people in a way. You can kind of,
Walter White.
Yeah, Walter White, although definitely not my favorite character.
No, not mine either, but fun to be in analysis.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Jeffrey would like to know, what period do you think was keenly fallow?
Fallow.
Yeah. I'm going to say, like, all the time, there's everything always on TV, right? There's always the horrible things and there's always the better things. How's that for a non-answer?
Yeah, I mean, especially now, there's more of everything. There's more crap and there's more amazing stuff.
Yeah, exactly. It's the best of times, the worst of times.
And you know, if you go back and watch some of the early 1950s sitcoms, you know, we have different values now, so it's hard to judge them, but they're very, very shallow and simplistic and flat and stereotypical and superficial. But they served their purpose at the time. And I still say that there's a lot of 80s TV that was just as flat and stupid.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I feel like a lot of 80s TV just didn't speak to me.
Yeah.
Especially things like, and I don't know, when was Full House?
Yeah, well,
You
I'm
know?
sorry, Full House comes to mind when I think of the 80s. But you know, I learned from teaching undergraduates in the last couple of years, and we talked about TV all the time, that it seems to me that that generation is to Full House as my generation is to the Brady Bunch. Because they all saw every episode 500 times and knew everything about Full House. And I was like, why do you guys talk about Full House all the time? And I realized I talk about the Brady Bunch all the time. It's like the background in their home as they're growing up.
Yeah.
And I never really liked Full House.
Meredith would also like to know if you, excuse me, can name one 70s show that you have actually rewatched and would recommend.
I don't think I think I already, you guys have heard me mention it so many times already. It was All in the Family. I've rewatched every episode and enjoyed it as much.
And Maude too. I've revisited some of those and they hold up.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're about out of time and about out of questions. So I think that we will say thank you both so much for such a fun conversation. And I hope that everybody enjoyed it. We really appreciate everybody being here, and we hope you all have a great night.
Thank you, Matthew. And thank you, Belmont Books. Thank you for being in existence. And Chris and Kathy, thank you for bringing back bookstores.
Yes, ditto.
It's our pleasure. Thank you so much. Take care, everyone.
All right, take care.
Bye, thank you.